and welcome to Kankakee Podcast, where we talk about the people and places of Kankakee County. I'm Jake LaMore, and this is our monthly episode with the Kankakee County Museum, where we dive into some local history. Now, before we invite Jack and Jorie back onto the podcast, I just want to point out some of the upcoming events happening at the Kankakee County Museum, including this coming Friday, August 30th. I'm excited for this. I don't know if either of you are going to be there, but I'm sure you must love this movie, and that's Casablanca. Or is
Usual Suspects.
Yes. So there's a outdoor movie showing in the Column Garden at the museum. That's this Friday, August 30th. Starts at 7:30. There's going to be snacks for sale. You got to bring your own blankets and lawn chairs, though. The Mums sale is going on right now, actually, too. That ends on the 27th, so even before the movie night. So if you haven't gotten your fall Mums yet, all proceeds from that go to the museum. There's going to be another movie night in the Column Garden on October 4th, and that is going to be the first Hocus Pocus, and that will start at 6:30. There is going to actually be some vendors there as well, like some craft vendors and things. And I believe candy and cake is going to be there offering food that you can purchase. And if either of the outdoor movies, if the weather's not good, don't worry. The movie's going to be moved inside. It's still going to happen. And I think there's another movie night on Friday, November 15th. That will be inside the museum by November, just because we know how the weather's like in November. And I believe the movie is They Shall Not Grow Old. It's I believe a World War II movie, or no, it's the First World War.
World War One.
Yeah, probably. World War One. That'll be at 4:30 on November 15th inside the museum. Then there is the New Year's Eve Gala. We're bringing that back once again this year, December 31st, which is a Tuesday this year. And that will be at the Majestic. So the Jazz Time Big Band will be playing once again. And I was told they're going to be playing a longer set this time. So that'll be exciting. So you can find all of these things and more, KankakeeCountyMuseum.com. You can also find the museum on Facebook and Instagram at Kankakee County Museum to stay up to date on those events, and there's always plenty more to come. Gallery of Trees will be coming up before you know it. All of those good things. So, but anyway, all of that aside, welcome back to Jorie Walters and Jack Klasey. Always good to have you guys here.
Always a pleasure to be here.
And we are talking about, speaking of movies, that kind of fits into what we're talking about today. We are going to be talking about theaters, I guess you could say, of yesteryear or yesterday in more or less downtown Kankakee for the most part.
Pretty much so.
And some of these still exist today. Some of them don't anymore. So I'm excited for this because I know there's theaters that existed in downtown Kankakee that a lot of people didn't realize. Back in the day, there were these smaller ones kind of spread throughout the downtown.
Storefronts rather than big, opera house type of things.
Yeah, and there would be like other businesses that were like operating in.
Oh, but we did have an opera house.
Right, well, we did have an opera house.
Our very own opera house.
Yes.
And let me show you. One of my favorite buildings of downtown. You might recognize it of today. Looks similar, but not quite as it used to. But if you see today in the corner of Schuyler in Merchant, it's called, I think, the Clock Tower building today.
Center. Right now it's the Clock Tower Center. Mm-hmm.
And the back of it was an opera house. It's an office building. And I'm going to show you a picture of what it used to look like. Is that good?
That's a view from about 1900.
Yes. So,
and the opera house was in the back here.
Yes.
And I'm not sure exactly what kind of architecture, but it reminds me a little bit of Gothic. Reminds me of
Yes.
that.
So
It
yeah.
had stacks. Oh, just
We don't know the architect if there was one.
not sure.
Oh, really?
We don't know. Yeah.
We don't know. We don't have
Not
that
so far as we know.
information.
No, we
Oh,
know
okay.
who owned it and who built it was Emery Cobb,
Yeah.
of course, who did just about everything in the
Yes,
city
he
at one
did.
time.
Yes.
And then Henry Topping purchased the building, knocked down the Opera House, built the office building, and then kind of reshaped the front of the building.
Yeah,
Yes.
actually, he demolished it completely
Oh, did he?
and
Oh,
rebuilt
okay.
it. Yeah, because I for a long time thought it was the same too, but then I found some more information not too
Okay.
long ago that no, Harry took it down to the ground and rebuilt it. Kept the same idea of the arcade inside, the open, wide hallways with stores opening off them. But totally interesting kind of sidelight too. Show the next picture, Jorie.
Yes, this is photograph of the inside of the arcade.
And
Opera
that's
House.
the theater, the Opera House. We have a picture, and I didn't make a copy of it. One of the things that were presented at the Opera House from time to time were high school plays.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a picture of a high school play, and I don't recall what year it was, but one of the people on the stage was Harry Topping.
Oh, wow.
And interestingly enough, of course, in I think it was the 1920s or 1930s.
It was the 1920s.
He took over bought the property and rebuilt it as the arcade building.
Gosh, it's funny how that all comes full circle. You know, you go from being in high school performing there, and the next thing you know, you're tearing the building down and you're
That's right.
rebuilding it. Just to kind of give you a perspective for those that might not be watching the video version of this. So the way the arcade building looked, it looks just kind of like what we said. It looks very similar to the building that's there today.
Right.
Just kind of picture the clock tower center that's there today. Picture it not as tall.
Right, 3 stories rather than 5.
Yeah, and having a bunch of like smokestacks and almost steeple looking parts of the building.
Right.
And today
Like a castle.
that perfect example, like a castle. And like today it's very much like rectangular,
Square.
Right.
very square, very,
Building.
cut,
Mm-hmm.
very straight. It's just straight up. And I forget what the amount of floors that building is today, but
5, I believe.
is it 5?
Either
Okay.
5 or 6.
And it just appears much taller
more of
than the original
Today,
building.
more of a modern office type of building. Back
Right.
then, more of an ornate
Stores
building.
and so forth.
A lot of buildings downtown in the original Kankakee did have very unique architecture.
Yeah.
And this was one of them.
I mean, it fit right in with all the churches that were built
It
around
did.
that time
Yes,
too.
it did.
So
When Emery Cobb built the original arcade building, his original intention was just to build a library, a public library.
that's right.
But then it grew. His idea changed, and it ended up with a number of stores, a bank, Western Union office, and of course the back half was the arcade opera house. So it became a much larger operation.
So what was the year that the Opera House opened?
1884.
And that was, as far as we know, that was like the first real performing center. I mean, they called it an opera house,
Right.
but for the sake of this, we'll say it was the first theater type building or venue that existed in the
Yeah,
city.
it was the first building or space built specifically for theater use. And actually, the opening presentation was opera. In 1884, there was a traveling opera company out of, I think, New York or something. Mrs. Abby Carrington was the person name. And they presented a program of arias and so forth from various operas. So it was quite a place. I think that a little bit from some of the statistics. For example, the theater stage was 54 feet wide and 80 feet deep. There were 480 theater seats in there. And the drop curtain, the curtain on the front of the stage, was interesting because the curtain showed a medallion view of the asylum buildings, the state hospital buildings. And the painting also showed a winding portion of the river with the steamboat Minnie Lily in the foreground.
Okay.
And the reporter for the Gazette who was writing this wrote, "It is a charming view and gratifying to Kankakeeans' sense of local pride."
Yeah, I was just going to say that really kind of showcases just how prideful they were of getting that asylum built here,
Right.
you know. And of course, that itself, talking about architecture, that really was, I feel like, the reason why they were so proud of it was because of the architecture
That's right.
of the insane asylum at the time.
Yes, the large limestone buildings and so forth.
Yeah.
The Opera House operated for 28 years. When Cobb died in 1810, his two sons,
He died in 1910.
1910.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And in 1912, his sons, who were his heirs, tore down the Opera House and built the 5-story building that's still there today. It's actually divided into 2 halves, 2 towers. The Opera House was also the site of the first motion picture shown in Kankakee. That was on September 26, 1900.
Oh, wow. That early.
Oh, yeah. And it was, of course, a silent movie.
Yeah.
There was a whole week of presentation. There were different subjects, but the first week was scenes from the Spanish-American War, which was kind of interesting. The others were various kind of magazine approach. I don't know what the other ones were, but that was definitely the first motion picture shown in town and the first theater in town.
Yeah. Wow. That would have been interesting to see.
Second theater was on Schuyler, in the 200 block of South Schuyler. It was called the Bijou. That opened in 1907.
Okay. And that's like where we're at.
Just about. Across the street, though.
Okay.
It was on the east side of Schuyler, midway between Merchant and Station Street. And if that seems a little familiar as the site of a movie house or of a store, actually the Bijou was the first, and there were 3 buildings at that site at different times that were all theaters. The second was the Gaiety, which was 1913 to 1919. And I think Jorie has a picture of the Gaiety at night lighted up. There we go.
Oh, that's really cool. It's like a night. Looks like a night scene.
It is a night scene. It's a postcard, color postcard, and across the street, if you can make out the Lafayette Hotel, which was, of course, just north of where we are right now.
Yes.
And the Gaiety was succeeded eventually in 1919 by the Luna, which was, if people who've been around town for a while remember, and probably been to theaters, though. You're too young for it. But
but Luna stood longer than any of those others.
That's right.
And this was all in the same building, though. It just changed names.
No, they rebuilt.
Each time.
At least the Bijou was torn down and the Gaiety was built, and I'm not sure whether the Gaiety became the Luna or whether they demolished and rebuilt again, too.
Okay.
Yeah, because the Luna really stayed around until about the 1970s.
Yes. Yeah, because I heard my parents talk about the Luna. So
my dad went there with his friends when he was in high school.
Yeah.
And I won't repeat some of the things that, they had fun.
Yes.
They didn't really watch. They just had fun.
Yes.
True popcorn
in the balcony.
Off the balcony and that sort of thing, yes. The Gaiety was the site for a presentation by an international theater star. Few people today would recognize the name Sarah Bernhardt, but Sarah Bernhardt was based in Paris, but she was an international star in the days when, before there were jet planes and so forth. She traveled all over the world by ship and,
probably had a steamer trunk and all of that.
Trunk. Oh, yeah. Anyway, she was an extremely well-known and a beloved star. She was a very classy lady from everything I've been able to read about her. She was even referred to as the Divine Sarah.
Wow. Doesn't get classier than that.
That's right. She arrived on October 13th, 19 1917 on the Illinois Central line on a special train, which had her private car attached.
Okay, so no private jets, but there were private cars.
Right. Yeah, and this was her world sort of farewell tour, I guess, or something like 1917. She appeared at the Gaiety. She did a matinee and an evening program where basically she reprised some of her formal roles and from various plays and did readings and so forth.
So this was like almost like doing monologues, or did she have like a
she
cast?
had a company with her, a cast.
She had a cast with her
from various things, I believe.
So it was almost like watching the Carol Burnett show.
Yeah, some sort of thing.
So like, it's called the Carol Burnett show, but she's got a cast of different people with her. Okay.
And she also appeared while she was in town between the matinee and the evening performance. She responded to an invitation from St. Viator's College to come out and speak to or meet their students and so forth.
Which is present-day Olivet, if you didn't know that.
And the reasoning for this was, of course, October 1917, we were right in the middle of World War I. And, of course, France was very involved in that. And she was very involved in war work and war bond things and so forth. And she said that, because so many of the young people from here, students who would be students at St. Viator were off in the military, she wanted to honor them and go to St. Viator. So that worked out fairly well, I guess. I think.
Okay, so she did quite a few shows while she was here.
And then got on her private car and went off to whatever the next city was.
Yeah, wow.
But it's surprising how many things we found that relate to theaters. One more, for example. Some of us are old enough to remember a TV show called My Three Sons.
Yes.
Was presided over by actor Fred McMurray, who did a lot of movie theater stuff as well as, or movies as well as TV. But My Three Sons was probably what most people remember him.
Probably. I always think of My Three Sons. I think of the movie The Apartment he was in with Jack Lemmon.
I think The Egg and I, maybe,
yeah.
Not sure.
Yeah.
I sort of remember that vaguely.
He was in The Absent-Minded Professor, which was the original Flubber movie.
That's right.
And actually, Fred McMurray was a big deal. I don't know if you have it in your notes, but in the early 1960s, he was the highest paid actor in Hollywood at one point for like a year or two.
That's pretty good.
So yeah, so he was a big deal there. And then when My Three Sons came around, that was like, he was well known by that point, and then became even more well known.
And his claim to fame is he is Kankakee's first native son to become an important actor. He was born here in 1908. His parents were vaudevillians, and they were playing at the Opera House at that time when he was born.
Okay.
His residency in Kankakee probably lasted about 2 days.
At St. Mary's, right? Or was it a different?
Probably at home, or probably at the hotel.
Really?
Because children born at that, most families delivered, or most women delivered their children at home or in another setting.
Well, that would have been the only other hospital in Kankakee anyway,
yes,
right? St. Mary's. So if he did, if he was delivered there, but still, yeah. So from the Gaiety then, what was, I would imagine at that point, some more stuff is popping up because we're kind of getting into the roaring 20s, right?
Ad from the Gaiety.
Oh, okay.
Now open vaudeville. An ad, and it says
how much was it?
Admission. Okay, matinee 2:30, admission 10 cents. Nightly at 8 o'clock, admission 10 cents, 20 cents, or 30 cents.
Interesting.
Seats on sale at East Attorney's Drugstore.
Now, there was a theater in town that only charged a nickel to get in. It was opened at 69 Southeast Avenue in 1908, and it was called the Nickel-Only Theater. But it was a Nickelodeon, as, of course, if you've ever been to the Museum of Science and Industry and went to their silent movie theater, that's a Nickelodeon, because most of the sort of bargain theaters at that time only charged a nickel, whereas the more established ones charged a dime
Yeah, and those Nickelodeons were very tiny, right? They were known to be very small. They weren't very grand.
Got another one there by any chance?
I have the Chateau Theater.
Oh, so okay, Chateau is a different.
The Chateau is a different one.
Blind Wives.
It happened to be the next one on the pile. So
okay, so yes, so where was the Chateau?
Chateau was on the north side of Court Street, midway between Schuyler and Dearborn, and was one of 3 theaters at any given time they were all at the same time on that same block. They were the La Petite photo play at 203 East Court. And these, again, were on the north side of the street. The Court Street at 209 East Court. And then originally at 217 East Court, the Princess, but that was replaced by the Chateau, and I don't have a date on that, unfortunately.
And so they
1913 to 1911.
Oh, okay.
Good. Okay, so some of these were like just the small, like you were saying, Nickelodeon theaters. They were just showing silent pictures.
Yeah, these were all storefronts.
Yeah, and then some of them were doing vaudeville and maybe a mix of silent films.
Some of them were a mix of silent films and vaudeville. And, of course, the silent films in these small venues, there was music provided by a piano player.
Yes, I was going to say, did they had a live piano player there, or did they have like a phonograph or something like that?
Mostly, I think, a live piano player, and of course, not here, but in the larger cities and so forth, the theaters like that might even have a small orchestra instead of just a. Now, we know of the name of at least one piano player in this era. In fact, it was at the Court Theater by the manager of the Court Theater, later the owner, was a man named Don Bester. And he moved to Kankakee in 1913 from somewhere in Wisconsin, I think. Became the manager of the Court Theater. And he was a professional musician anyway, and so it's quite likely he was also the official pianist for the Court Theater. By 1919, he actually became the owner of that particular, and was also served as the first ward alderman in Kankakee. So he was active in the community.
Okay.
But in 1922, he sold the business, or I believe, and moved to Chicago, where he had a large popular orchestra for a number of years. He even had one orchestra at one point that was a national radio show.
Wow, that's a big deal. So he really moved up.
And he moved up even further. In October 1934, he became the band leader for a comedian named Jack Benny.
Oh, that's no small.
It's a popular network radio program. Jack Benny and his sidekick, Rochester.
Man, so he really hit the big time then. He was making good money.
Yes, he did. And he also has another claim to fame because he's credited with creating the first commercial advertising jingle.
Oh, wow.
For a sponsor of the Benny's show, which was the Jell-O Corporation or company. And the first jingle was Jello.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh.
And that opened each program. Benny would say, "Play it, Don," or "Play, Don, play."
Yeah.
And up would come Jello.
Oh my gosh. And then everyone bought Jell-O.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, we got to have that thing they have. What is that? That you call it a song or a jingle?
Yes. His orchestra also played at the opening of the Kankakee Armory over on Indiana, which is now, of course, the Park District's. And that
Rec
was,
Center,
I think, in 28, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Wow.
So, interesting guy.
Yeah.
I did a column on him at one time, and I was amazed at all the things I could find on him.
Yeah, he just kept going up and up. That's great.
I have a few ads on the La Petite, but I want you, people looking at this, and then I'll describe it, notice something very distinct between the name. It's going to be La Petite Theater, but on them, notice something about the title.
Like where it says La Petite?
Okay, so keep that in mind.
Okay.
This is La Petite, Lapetite Theater. Okay. The next one Is
I know where you're going.
Le Petit.
Oh,
Le Petit.
interesting.
Now, same theater.
But they completely, was it?
Well, because when they came out with La Petite, that's actually inaccurate because it's a French name
Yeah.
and theater is masculine
Yes.
in the French language, and la with an E on the end of a word is feminine.
Yes.
So they had to change it to Le Petit, Lepettit.
Yeah, that was in 1935. After it had been closed for a while, it was reopened under that name.
Yeah,
It only lasted a few years, though.
the French Canadians saw that right away, and they're like, "Yeah, that's
Probably
not
so.
right."
Yeah, so the ads, or one of the ads says there's, quote, happiness ahead for Kankakee at the Le Petit Theater. Actually, théâtre, which is French.
Right.
Theatre.
Mhm.
Théâtre.
Yeah.
And so that's that ad. And then the other one is today starts our 12th anniversary month.
Yeah, and the date is
Okay.
what, March
Okay. And that one's 21,
1931.
March through and 21.
1921. So that was around for quite a while.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. And that
Before
was where again?
That was on Court Street.
On
Le
the north
Petit
side
was
of,
on Court Street?
It was one of the three theaters on
Yeah.
the 200
actually
block of North Court,
have a
on the
great-
north side of East Court Street.
Okay.
Photograph of it, not here, but we have a great photograph of it.
It
on the
shows
front.
2 out of the 3 out there. Does it show all 3? I don't know. I'm pretty sure it shows the court and the La Petite, but I'm not sure
Yeah.
about the princess. Names changed
Yeah.
all the time on these theaters, too.
Yeah, I was gonna say it seems like it.
let's see.
Yeah, for example, we talked a few minutes ago about the Nickel Only.
Mm-hmm.
In 1916, that was renamed the Royal. And then in 1927, it became the Lyric.
Okay.
So you can't tell the theaters without a program, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Jorie's pretty much more familiar with this than I am, but the Remington Theater at 160 North Schuyler, which would be the east side of the 100 block of Schuyler, about the middle of the block, opened on May 1912. And take it away, Jorie.
We don't have an actual photograph, but we have a sketch of it.
Oh, I don't think I've ever seen that sketch of the Remington.
It's pretty
is
pretty
a
good one
big-
too. Yeah, and
Building, and there is a map of where it was, but it seemed like the building showed like a very small building, and I think that it took up more space than what it showed, because this looks to me like a very big building.
It looks huge.
I
Like it
think
takes
it
up-
probably took maybe half the block. There was the hardware store. Can't think of the name offhand, but where the Jaffe building is right at the corner of Court and Schuyler.
Yes.
That was a large hardware store. I was there for many years, but directly north of that was the Remington Theater, and I don't know how far up it, but probably almost to Oak Street, or at least 2/3 of the way to Oak Street.
That's what I think. So people in the age range for Old Town Cinema would go downtown and they could go to Old Town Cinema. That's the same location
Right.
as the Remington.
And the Majestic.
And then before that was the Majestic. But
Right.
if you remember either one of those, you see a big screen and you saw the balcony and the seats. But I still think that was much smaller when they rebuilt it.
Well,
than
and the
original.
Remington completely burned down, and they
It
built.
completely burned.
Remington
Yeah,
was
so
pretty
that's
good
sorry. I didn't
size
mean
as
to.
far
Wasn't
That's
trying to
fine.
steal the.
Oh no,
Remington had 1,200 seats, so it was pretty
Yes.
good sized.
it was huge.
Auditorium.
So that was probably the next biggest theater, because
Yes.
how big was the Gaiety? It wasn't that big, was it?
No, they were smaller. I think
Okay.
not 500, but maybe
Yeah.
less than 1,000.
Remington and Opera House were probably the two biggest.
Mhm.
Had probably one of the seats in the Remington I read was like a couple dollars to $10
Wow,
for
at
the
that time?
prime
Yes,
Oh,
that
yes,
was pretty fancy.
seat, $10, and that was a lot of money. So you know, people who went to the Remington in town probably are the ones who weren't going to the nickel only
Yeah.
ones.
Yes.
Well, and it sounds like
You know.
some of the shows they were bringing in too were of higher stature as well, right? I mean, some of the vaudeville performers they had
were
were
on the national circuits.
were on the bigger
Right.
side of things.
Interestingly, of course, the Remington was opened in May 1912, and the Arcade Opera House was torn down the same year.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Jorie, did you have much on the fire there? Yes.
Let's see.
Oh, so you get new
Let me
theater.
talk a little bit about. Okay, so the Remington burned about 5 months after it was built.
October 3rd, 1912.
Julia Remington was the owner of the building, and from what I can understand, they didn't really spare anything. They had, I think I read, was it 1,200 seats?
Right.
They had
That's
to-
what Jack said.
is
Yeah,
what I had
1,200.
seen
Yeah.
somewhere, right? So it was a good-sized theater.
It
Right.
was just huge, and it had several floors, several different theaters, and they had some 15 dressing rooms,
Oh, wow.
something like that.
A big place.
It was a huge
Yeah, 'cause
area.
this was live theater as well as
Yes.
the
Yeah.
movies.
So I think today it would be, what is the majestic little mall there
Yeah.
that has the picture, the theater now, a stage.
Mhm.
And I think it would have taken, was the restaurant.
Regos.
Regos.
I think it would have been where Rigo's is as well,
Yes.
and
down.
maybe even a little further.
You would think so.
That's my professional.
Yeah, the Majestic building.
We don't
Yeah.
know exactly.
Right. And
But-
I know there's lots of speculation. A lot of historians, local historians, have this debate on
Mhm.
what exactly where it was compared to
Yeah.
what the
Right.
building is there today. There's a lot of
Yes.
debate over that.
Mhm. And then, unfortunately,
On October 3rd, 1912. This is October 4th.
Do they know what caused the fire? Did they ever figure it out?
Don't know. I don't think
back
so.
in the day when they don't know because they didn't have fire inspectors,
No. And it was very common fires were
spontaneous combustion.
Let's see.
But
we
I
got,
believe the curtain.
let's see. It was it was 12:30 a.m. on October 3rd when it was discovered. So, by Sanford Remington, fire seemed to be confined to the loft among the scenery and in the roof and the flies. So apparently, it might have been something that set a fire in the scenery loft, which would have been very
Mhm.
flammable anyway.
Mhm.
But it was by the way, the original building itself was erected at a cost of $80,000,
Yes.
which is no
Yes.
chump change.
No,
8,000.
that's big change in 1912.
Uh-huh.
So the Remington burns down, and what does Mrs. Remington do?
It was sold.
Oh no, she rebuilt.
Oh, that she
And
did
then it was
rebuild.
sold, yeah.
And then it was sold.
Sorry.
So she rebuilt. See, that's why we work together.
Right, because we
Do
catch each
well.
other on problems.
Now,
Yes.
at this day and age, was there insurance money or anything like that
There
that
was
she was able
partial,
to?
I think.
Okay.
Might be interesting to determine what happened with the fire too. It not only burned out that theater, there was on the block behind it on Dearborn a large livery stable that burned. I believe there was a cottage, and then on Court Street, several buildings there, including the two that included the La Petite and the Court Theaters, and the one of the newspaper offices were badly damaged.
Mhm.
So it was pretty
Mhm.
widespread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a huge fire, and I think that the Baker Livery Stable,
Mhm.
which had 30 horses in it, which the firemen were able to get out there,
Mhm.
but Court Theater and the Daily Republican newspaper
Mhm.
office and press room were among the
Yep.
things that were damaged. On November 13th, 1913, the
Mhm.
Okay, less than 2 years later, however, financial problems forced the sale of the building, and several months later it reopened as the Majestic Theater.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming what was rebuilt is what's there today.
As the Majestic, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
think
rebuilt and renamed as the Majestic.
Yeah.
And then just maybe downsized it.
Yeah.
Didn't make it as big.
Yeah.
As big.
Well, for example, Town Cinema was a downsized portion of the
Mhm.
Majestic Theater,
Oh, it was?
Mhm.
Okay.
where I saw Star Wars the first time.
Oh, cool.
But famous acts that have appeared at the Remington or the Majestic, depending on which one it was. The Marx Brothers.
Mhm.
Okay. I wasn't sure if they appeared there when it was the Majestic or the Remington.
To see if I can sequence that over. We don't say when. It was as the Majestic apparently, but it doesn't give a particular date. And of course, at one time there was a coffee shop in that building called Groucho's.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that.
Mhm.
I remember that place.
That's now where the
Lush Vine.
Lush Vine is. That's
Yes.
right. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's a nice
Oh, there, Majestic
from
ad. Yeah.
1915.
Like the dress rehearsal,
Mhm.
Majestic Theater. So it ran as Town Cinema until the 1980s?
I believe so. Let me see if I can.
80 something.
Yeah, it was closed once the Meadowview Theater opened
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
because it didn't have the capacity that the ownerships wanted. So the Paramount people before Classic Cinemas, I think, owned the Town Cinema.
Yep.
So I guess going from the Majestic then is what's the next theater? Does that go to maybe the supposed Dearborn Theater, or does Paramount come before that?
No, Paramount comes in. Oh, we also happened to have skipped over something here.
Did we skip over some?
Yeah, we skipped over the fact that the silent movies started talking.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about.
We had the talkies, and so we have the first talkies. Where talkie was at the Majestic Theater on December 12th, 1928, and it was called The Lion and the Mouse, starring Lionel Barrymore.
Ooh, boy.
Yeah, and the Majestic advertised the fact that pictures you can hear as well as see.
It's a game changer.
Yes, and so that was the era of suddenly talking. Originally, the first talking movies were only partially talking and the rest were piano playing, but they eventually became what they would refer to as all talkies. The last silent show was somewhat after that, actually. It was, 'cause, let's see. Oh, yeah. So it took several years for the changeover to finally go to all talkie shows. The Lyric Theater, which began life as the nickel-only theater on East Avenue, played its last silent film on the evening of September 29th, 1931.
Okay, so it took 2 or 3 years for it to kind of catch up. And
next step, of course, you were saying, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
For Paramount.
Okay, it is Paramount.
1931. They built what was called at that time a movie palace.
Yeah.
Yes, Jorie has some information on that.
Movie Palace. Paramount. I have a picture. Well, I have a picture that I got, and he got. In honor of my father, who was at Paramount a lot, but also at the Steak and Shake right across the street, which is the parking lot now to what was Montgomery Ward and later Kroger, and now it's something I'm not sure. Parking lot.
Parking lot for the Paramount people crossing across Scatter.
Yes. So
and
you
that
can see
was
the
Steak and Shake. My dad.
see the little Steak and Shake, and this would have been
50s.
Yeah, the 50s, and that's also when they had the was the vertical marquee in
Yes.
there?
Not
As
in
well-
the 50s. It was
Okay.
I'm sorry.
They had taken it down by the 50s?
Yes.
Okay, because
it's gone from this picture.
Okay, so because when it originally opened, they had a long vertical
Yes,
marquee
and it was
as
for
well.
many-
Oh, I
there
have
it is.
right
Yeah.
here.
Yes, for many years that was the downtown landmark.
Yeah, as well as they had the marquee that you see today.
Yes.
But yeah, they had to summarize it, I guess the vertical one looks like if you've ever seen the Chicago marquee, Chicago Theater marquee,
Yes.
it looks exactly
It's very
like that.
long. Paramount is spelled straight
Vertical.
down,
Yes.
and it's huge. We have several photographs in our collection of Paramount from different angles.
Quite a few different ones.
This one happens to have trees and a fence.
This was
right next to it.
1933, roughly, this
So
particular.
just a couple of years after
Yeah.
the fact. So who built the theater? Was there a connection to Paramount Pictures at all? Do you know of?
I'm not sure. It may have been. It might have been. It was an out-of-town company anyway.
Okay.
And it was, let's say, a movie palace, which meant it was pretty fancy. It wasn't like the Chicago Theater or something like that, but it was a 1,200-seat theater, similar to the same as the Remington had been or the Majestic.
And it was just one theater. It
Yes.
wasn't
Yes,
the
at that
multiple
time, it
Yeah,
theaters.
the buildings to the south of that, I think, are connected. I don't know if they're part of the same building, but they're the same period, and there are nice terracotta facades and so forth on them, and they were stores below and apartments above.
Yeah, I think they still have the studio apartments above.
I think so.
Yeah.
The walls and soaring. I got a description here of what this the most ornate movie venue ever seen in Kankakee, of course. Walls and soaring ceiling of the 1,200-seat auditorium were decorated with the Art Deco style, covered in complex painted designs, intricate plaster plaques, and cornices stenciled with motifs. They were displayed in the lobby and the hallways, and shimmering chandeliers lighted the lobby and auditorium. Glazed terracotta tiles with raised Art Deco designs covered the front of the theater and its connected apartment and retail store building. Just answered my own question.
Yes.
Everyone who attended the theater opening were pleased with the beauty of the building and its furnishings, reported the Kankakee Daily Republican on May 3rd.
What's crazy about the one time I got to go into the projection booth in the original theater there at Paramount, it was a dangerous equipment because they had fire doors that were in place up in that projection booth. If something happened to catch fire in there, and I remember when I walked through and I saw that, I'm like, man, it's kind of scary, like to think that, hey, there might be a fire up here if I'm the guy that's working the booth.
Oh, yeah.
And I got to close the fire doors. But that always just kind of, I was just kind of stuck with me seeing the inside of the projection booth,
Speaking of projection booths, I remember vaguely reading somewhere, and I'm not sure what the source was, but the Luna projection booth was on the roof, and the projectionist, I believe, had to go out on the roof and then go into the projection booth.
Oh my gosh, kidding.
It's really a little tough in the wintertime, I would think.
Yeah. Wonder how that would work. Well, that'd be fascinating to do some research on that.
I'm not even sure where I saw that reference, but it may have been on a Facebook page of some sort, where it's Facebook group or interest thing of some sort.
Yeah.
We also have a photograph of the Luna in our collection of the Luna sign, which was big, and it was also
It was vertical.
vertical.
Yeah.
In downtown, like in the
Yeah,
70s.
I think that's the one I'm thinking of. It's looking north on Schuyler from Station Street. And of course, obviously, you've got the Luna, and immediately behind that, Alden's, which may have been the Chicago store at the time of this picture. I'm not sure. Beyond that, the Hotel Kankakee, and on the other side, Lafayette Hotel.
Okay.
So it's really cool. It's about 1912 brick streets and a few cars.
That is cool. That's very cool. So, the Paramount comes to town. They also had a stage as well, so they would do some live things, but
That's right.
it was mostly pictures.
Primarily pictures.
Yeah. And then I know people or some of the business people were seeing the success of Paramount, and they were thinking, oh, we need to build something bigger than this. And that's kind of when the Dearborn comes into play, right?
I'd almost forgotten about
that.
Yeah, the Dearborn on the corner of Dearborn and Merchant Street on the northeast corner, where for many years from the 50s onward was the Journal building.
And if I remember correctly, they were trying to build somewhere between a 3,000 to 5,000 person theater there, wasn't it? The Dearborn Theater?
It was supposed to be huge, and then stores and apartments.
It was supposed to be,
take up most of the block.
Yeah, it was supposed to pale in comparison to Paramount.
Unfortunately, the Depression did them in.
Right.
And all they had was an excavation for the basement or for the underpinnings and the footings.
Yeah, they had some foundation.
Right. And eventually that flooded, and that I think at least one child fell in there and was rescued from drowning and so forth. Eventually, when it became obvious there was never going to be anything there, they filled it in, covered it up, and it became a vacant lot for a long time. For quite a few years, and the Romy Hamas Ford dealership, which faced on Indiana, used that as their used car lot. And there was, before they tried to build that building, there was a house on that corner, that was a private club called the Kankakee Club. And I think it was kind of a, place for kind of like the athletic clubs or the social clubs in Chicago. Yeah. But then that got torn down, I believe, for the Dearborn building.
Yeah. Is that all most of the theaters? I mean, I know that's quite a few, but wasn't sure if there were any others.
Well, actually, in one way, in the downtown area, that is. Yes.
Yes, in the downtown. Yeah.
Okay, about 1970 to 1991, we had the Town Cinema, which we talked about before. In 1967, the Meadowview Theater opened, and a number of years later, of course, Movies 10 out in the mall.
Yes,
but
the movies followed the retail wherever they went.
That's
pretty
right.
much
That's where people go.
Right.
Paramount, by the way, of course, changed ownership. It had, I don't remember what the original owners may have been. Paramount Theaters, but 1988, Classic Cinemas, which started out up in the DuPage County area and rescuing and restoring old theaters and doing a beautiful job on it, purchased the Paramount, and quite several months they spent totally restoring the interior, including repainting all of the murals and the interior stuff, and reopened late in that same year. So they really only spent probably 6 to 8 months. Yeah. We have 2 theater seats, from the original Paramount at the museum.
That's right, and they restored them for you too.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, and they look great.
Yeah, they're in our little theater in the story of Kankakee County, where we occasionally project different programs and so forth.
Yeah.
There's one more that we can't forget about. That was at the
Electric Park had a theater.
Park. There we go.
Yes. They had a theater there.
I think my brain went home already.
Well, we've talked about a lot.
They had a 600-seat auditorium.
That's right.
And they had plays. They had music. They had matinees, and they had evening performances as well. And we have a lot of ads in that file.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that,
there were a lot of
for summer
bands, a lot of dance hall area.
Yeah,
too.
that was all live performances. That theater was. I don't think it ever showed movies. Correct?
No, it was
1887,
1897. So
yes.
For that, but they had lots of live entertainment, and because they had lights, they could do evening performances.
Yep.
And the Green Lantern Dance Hall, they had dance contests.
Yeah.
It was a hopping place. I would have loved to have.
Oh, wouldn't that have been so
there.
cool? I know. That's what I think of when we talk about all of these things.
And then we can't forget the Starlight
the drive-ins.
Movie drive-in.
We didn't talk about the drive-ins.
54
no.
and the Starlight.
I mean, we were mainly talking about downtown. But yeah, if we're getting out of downtown a little bit,
I
yeah,
just
you've got the
remember
drive-ins.
seeing Star Wars at the drive-in.
That's cool.
Okay.
That would be awesome.
As the second movie, so it was the first movie.
Yeah.
Scott Baio was in, he was young, and I can't remember the name of the movie. But by the time the Star Wars came about, I was halfway. I just remember that.
That's so funny.
Yeah, and of course, there was the 54 drive-in also.
Yes.
Up at Fair Street and Route 50 or 54 at that time.
Yeah, where Old Fair Park is.
Yes.
Yeah.
To the east of, let's see. No, approximately where the residential development at the
That's true. It's more of where the residential development is.
Right there, because there was also Sully's restaurant was first up there at that stretch of land.
Oh, I didn't know that. I always thought Sully's was by Paul's place there.
Well, actually, it originally was out on Fair Street. Then for a while, it was where the Jensen Funeral Home on East Court Street is.
Oh, okay.
And then they bought the old flax mill down at
Gotcha. I didn't realize
East
that.
Avenue.
I always thought that was it's one and only location. I didn't realize it bounced around.
No, they bounced around a bit.
Yeah. But if you do want to go for a little drive, and it's really not that far of a drive, I don't think there's any remnants of the 54 drive-in, but there is of the Starlight. If you go and drive 17. Just on 17, you get on Court Street, you go east, you'll see that the screen is still there. Yeah. You're going to see what looks like, it's like a construction, almost not a construction site, but like, looks like where they store like construction equipment, some construction materials and things like that. And you'll see the screen out there towards the back. And you can kind of see even like the driveway into that place is kind of, it might be original, at least the way it's curved in, because it kind of snakes or goes around kind of like a drive-in movie theater would, because they usually wasn't like a straight shot in the theater. It always curved around so that cars could line up and hopefully not get too much of the traffic, on the main street. But yeah, so I always love driving by there and being like, there's the screen. It's still there all these years. I
live on Law Road, so I pass by there frequently.
Yeah, but
interestingly, at one point, and this was back roughly 80s maybe, and I don't remember the details, but that site was under serious consideration for the music venue that went to Tinley Park.
Oh, the World
Music Theater. Yeah,
I guess I forgot about that. Yeah, no,
didn't win out though.
No, obviously, yeah, that would have been a good spot for it. It's honestly, that's still a good spot for a drive-in if anyone ever wanted to like resurrect where the Starlight is.
I mean, Gibson City is the only active drive-in anymore. I think.
Yeah, I think the 49er in Valparaiso, Indiana, still exists. Yeah. There was one in McHenry, Illinois. I'm not sure if that's still there. There used to be one in West Chicago as well.
Possibly. Yeah.
I don't know if that one's still in existence, but yeah, you got to drive a little ways. But Gibson City's not too bad. So, but yeah, I mean, shoot, that was a lot. So, as always, encourage you to go check out the Kankakee County Museum. I guarantee you will find at least one thing there in our county's history that will interest you, whether it's what we talked about today or something else. The museum is loaded with all kinds of things. KankakeeCountyMuseum.com and Facebook and Instagram. There's always plenty different events going on.
And the file I have on theaters is very full. We only take out some things that we refer to. We have a lot of photographs of a lot of the theaters.
And the ads.
And we have a lot of ads. So anybody who would like to go through and learn a little bit more in depth on all of the activity. This town has so much going on with the theaters and with shopping and with all kinds of things. And it's exciting to bring these things back to life.
It is, yeah.
Renaissance of the downtown area.
Yeah.
It's just,
Absolutely.
It's wonderful. So anybody who is interested, please contact me, and I'm happy to share this with you.
Cool. All right. Well, Jack and Jorie, thank you so much again.
Thank
As
you for
always,
having us.
great pleasure.
We have a lot of fun doing this.
Yeah,
so.
me too.
These tend to become such a free-form discussion.
Yeah, they
we
kind
go
of
off
get
in
that way.
different tangents
Oh my
until-
gosh, it's hard not to because everything's connected.
That's
you
right.
know?
Yes.
That concludes this episode of Kankakee Podcast. I'm Jake LaMore. Thank you so much for listening. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Kankakee Podcast. Shout out to Stephanie Vanderweide for supporting the show each month through Patreon. If you want your name announced on a future episode, you can sign up at patreon.com/Kankakee Podcast. Special thanks to our sponsors, Chicago Dough Company, Noble Dairy Queen Stores, Frank's Appliance Center and Sleep Source, Pigosh Engineering, King Music, Little Me Studio, Taco John's, D. Westfall Jewelers, and Edward Jones Financial Advisor Adam Elroy. Kankakee Podcast is produced by the fine team at Pathfinder, a full-service marketing agency in downtown Kankakee. Learn more at yourpathfinder.io. Our theme song is by Lupe Carroll.